Okay. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Guernica Editions Fall 2025 virtual launch. Thank you to everyone who has joined us virtually, the authors in the audience. I'm Marissa, the publicist covering for Anna while she's on maternity leave. I'm excited to introduce 5 amazing titles that we'll be diving into this afternoon, most of which are from our Guernica World Editions imprint. First up is the historical novel Night Comes Down by Richard Aronowitz. Then we have the Annex, translated by Kathryn Gabinet-Kroo, which is the only title being launched today from our original Guernica Editions imprint and one of our essential translations novels. After that, William A. Douglas will read from his book, Whose Fish Is It?, followed by Anthony M. Graziano's reading from his historical novel, Teddy's World. The final book presented will be the poetry collection, The Fig Thief by Gabriella Belfiglio. Finally, we will end the afternoon with a Q&A period after all the readings are finished, so feel free to put any questions you have for any of the authors in the chat at any time throughout the launch, and they will be answered at the end. So let's get started on this amazing lineup. I will be putting the links to each of these books in the chat as we go for anyone interested in learning more or purchasing a copy. So first up is Richard Aronowitz. Richard Aronowitz grew up in rural Gloucestershire and studied at Durham University, the Courtauld Institute, and at Oxford University. His writing has been published in The Guardian and the independent newspapers in the UK, as well as in many leading literary journals, including the London Magazine and Strand. His poems have been shortlisted for the Bridport Prize and the Troubadour International Poetry Prize, and anthologized in Anvil New Poets 3. His debut poetry collection, Life Lessons, came out in 2019. Richard's novels include Five Amber Beads, 2006, It's Just the Beating of My Heart, 2010, An American Decade, 2017, and Night Comes Down, 2025. He lives in Oxford, UK. So I'd like to invite Richard to present his book.
Thank you very much, Marisa, for the kind introduction. I think I've got about 10 minutes to speak and read, so I'll be fairly brief. But as you've heard, my name is Richard Aronowitz, and I'm talking to you today from Oxford, where I did my graduate studies. You've heard this is my fourth novel. I have two different strands of my novel writing. One is bucolic, and this is the sort of strand that Night Comes Down falls into. I began it about 8 years ago, and I set myself the unusual challenge then in my mid-40s of writing from the perspective of a 19-year-old girl, a 19-year-old girl who lived in the 1840s in what is for us a very remote county called Herefordshire. Not as remote as your Canadian or North American wildernesses, but for us it's a very remote stretch still today of the country. And I wanted to write a book about the incursion of modernity into an ancient agrarian way of life. And I could think of nothing better than the arrival of the railway. It just so happens, and I didn't know this when I began this novel 8 years ago, that this year, 2025, is the 200th anniversary of the arrival of the steam railways in Britain. So it's actually a very timely book. Anyway, I'm going to read part of chapter 1, and it's set in a fictional place called Much Purlock, so a small market town in Herefordshire. But largely the book is about a wood, and it starts in the voice of Grace. So little is chance, and so much in our lives is governed by things we can only catch out of the corners of our eyes. I cannot prove it, but I know it is true. Call it an intuition, a sixth sense, whatever you like, but chance is as rare as hen's teeth. Things happen for a reason, because of some pattern of actions or events that is set off perhaps miles or years from where you are now. The echoes of these events come at you in ripples and waves, soundlessly without you even knowing. It is like that in the valleys around Much Purlock. You think you are immune from the outside world, impervious to its intrusions, and nothing can reach you there. But it can, and once it has come, it is very hard to get rid of again. The world brings with it dangers you cannot see until it is too late. What happened to the navvy's foreman, Mr. Sanson, a Gloucester man, almost one of us, just shows you how true that is. He might not have been a good man, but he did not deserve to die when and how he did. They cut a branch line through the next valley over from ours 5 years ago now. The blasting of the gunpowder, the steam hammer breaking up the rock that forms the bed of the valley, and the shouts of the Irishmen as they worked were a profound shock to the nature there. They were met with a stunned, reverberating silence. I did not like that silence. It did something to me. The top-hatted gentlemen from the railway company board were calling it progress at the town hall meeting they had convened before their men began blasting out the bed of the line. I and many others had quite another name for it: unwanted intrusion. While the men from the railway board tried to win us over with their slippery words, we shouted back that they could keep their bloody progress, that we did not want them to ruin our land just to line the silk pockets of their suits. The men and women, girls and boys from the newly formed Herefordshire branch of the Anti-Railway League, who were in the audience that heaving hot night, told them in no uncertain terms that we did not want things to change, that we wanted things to stay the way they had been around here for hundreds, thousands of years, but they did not listen. The mayors and the men of business in the towns further down the proposed route of the line had other ideas. I blamed the shock to nature on them. First it was the rooks. They started to fall stone dead from the trees once the blasting had begun. I thought at first it was the shock of the cacophony the railway workers brought with them that had the birds perishing where they perched. I believed the harsh waves of sound from this so-called advancement of the modern world had driven the life spirits out of them. There is nothing subtle about gunpowder. It stamps man's presence on nature with all the fire of the devil's own forge. But it was not the assault of noise and reverberation that was killing the rooks. I was out walking up Channer's Lane one fine morning when the navvies had begun their blasting that summer. It was still too early for them to have started their infernal work, and the whole valley, the entire world, seemed to be at peace. The spire of Blackthorn Church rose up pink in the sunrise against the green of the trees in the distance. There was no sound except my footsteps dragging on the unmetalled lane. Suddenly a dark bird dropped from almost directly above onto the lane in front of me. I turned it over with my black boot, and it was blacker still, and a large thing, a rook. Whereas expecting to see a hard, shiny beak, I saw only scaliness and mould. On my journeys up and down Channer's Lane and through the fields and woods, either to the manor or to the mill, over the weeks that followed, I saw more of the birds, glassy-eyed, mouldy-beaked and dead before they had fallen from the sky or the trees. This was no mass death from shock or accident. This was the result of some insidious disease spreading through the local rook population. I blamed the navvies for bringing the disease with them from the outside world. Perhaps they had stirred up something, some malignancy in the soil, in the very rock of the valley that had lain dormant since ancient times, since even before the Romans or Celts were here. So that's the voice of Grace opening the book, and she is, of course, the main character and the thread along which I string this increasingly dark and probably strange tale. But it tells in the end two perspectives. It has Grace, this local Herefordshire lass, daughter of the local doctor. The book starts when she's 17 or 18. She's narrating it in hindsight, looking back on her life. The other voice is that of one of the Irish navvies who's come over from Ireland to work on the railway. And I'm going to read you, I know I have very little time, so I'm just going to read you a couple of paragraphs in his voice. I can't, of course, do an Irish accent, so I'm not even going to try. So he's again very young. He's 19 when he comes over from rural Ireland. His family are farmers in County Sligo. His dad has recently died, left him and his brother and mother in severe debt. And his older brother, Niall, who has taken over the running of the farm, says to Sean, his younger brother, you need to find alternative ways of earning money. And I've heard that in England they're building the railway, and perhaps you can go over there for a couple of years and earn some money of your own and then come back when things have improved. So he goes away to the barn on the farm where the cattle are housed overnight to think about what to do, what choice to make. I'm just going to read you a couple of paragraphs before I close from Sean's voice. Cattle run towards food and away from danger. What would they do if they were me? I can make no picture in my mind of England or of the work that I might do there. With a farm, you know exactly what each field is for, where the horses run, where the cattle feed, where the crops grow, where roots and weeds need to be tilled out of the soil. No other work is so anchored to the land. If I leave Rose Farm, I will be set adrift. I have never seen these railways. Where do they take you in such a hurry? Will I ever come home again? I climb into the hayloft and lie awake for hours in the cold dark, cocooned in sweet hay, the candle having long since burned itself out. The cattle below breathe deeply in their slumber. As first light comes through the boards, words that I cannot stop forming in my mind have reached my lips. I will go. I do not want to say them, but I have little choice. So there begins the long, long odyssey of Sean's coming to England on a boat by boat. And as the story unfolds and unwinds, the life of Sean the navvy and Grace, the local doctor's daughter in rural Herefordshire, become more and more intertwined. And that's where I'll end. So this is Night Comes Down.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, next up is the translator of the Annex, Kathryn Gabinet-Kroo, who was born and raised in Oregon. She moved to Montreal, Canada, where she began her career as a professional artist. While painting and raising a family, she earned her master's in translation studies. She has worked for clients in the public and private sector, but now focuses on literary translation. Her French to English translations of 6 novels and 2 short story collections by Quebec authors have been published. So, Kathryn, I will hand this over to you.
Thank you, Marissa. In 2001, I finished my master's thesis in translation studies, and it was on the first novel by Kathryn Mavakakis. And ever since then, I've tried to persuade a publisher to support the translation of one of her later novels. And now, 24 years later, thanks to Guernica and Michael Marola, here we are. The Annex is ostensibly a spy thriller. Anna, a Secret Service agent, is always on a mission somewhere in the world, and so she considers herself stateless and somewhat homeless. Perhaps the only place where she feels at home is in Amsterdam, in the tiny annex where Anne Frank and her family lived in secrecy, hoping to escape the Nazi concentration camps. During one of her regular pilgrimages to this tiny hideout, she realizes she's being followed. Because of a grave mistake she made committed during one of her previous missions, her employer, the organization known as Agathos, is forced to extract her and smuggle her to a safe house, whose location is intentionally kept hidden from her, although an accidental reference to Schwartz's smoked meat convinces her she's headed to Montreal. Once there, she meets Celestino, the enigmatic guardian of this annex apartment he calls the Hotel Budapest. He's a literature buff with whom she begins a dangerous pas de deux. She uses literary heroes who stand out in her mind to rank, categorize, and better understand her new prison and the array of extraordinary characters hiding there with her. In the section I'm going to read, our spy is adjusting to her new life in confinement. I was a bit troubled by my feelings about Celestino. The damn Cuban seemed rather crafty. He had spoken to me only once, and already my thoughts drew me toward him. He had awakened in me from a deep sleep earlier that morning, and had also awakened in me the literature that had lain dormant for years. This was no small feat, but instead of surrendering myself to a banal and benign consolation in this budding relationship, I knew I had to be suspicious. I could, unwittingly, find myself caught in my jailer's nets. What stratagem had he planned for me? Celestino said he knew nothing about me and was guessing at everything. In fact, he may even have intentionally talked to me about novels, after having read my file, which he claimed he had not read. He had doubtlessly learned how to start a conversation with me and how to manipulate me. When I was young, I had lived through and for books, and if there was one sacrifice I'd made when changing my life, it was giving up literature. But now, thanks to the diabolical Celestino in this Annex-Kroo library, books would again be my true companions. I would be able to reconnect with the person I'd once been. Hard to imagine that it all stemmed from an ordinary coincidence. Even harder to believe that Titino had formulated a Machiavellian scheme to entrap me. For the moment, I decided to put up drawing a conclusion on the subject of Celestino. I thought instead about The Kiss of the Spider Woman, El Beso de la Mujer Araña, that wonderful novel by the Argentinian author Manuel Puig. In it, Molino betrays Valentin, with whom he shares a prison cell. I banished the thought. It wasn't yet time to panic. I was mulling over these thoughts as I washed the dishes, with Madame Mumu found enormously annoying. Apparently, she needed the sink to make her tomato sandwiches, since this most excellent cook had decided to copy my meal, and I was blocking her way. At least that's what she tried to convey to me without deigning to ask me to move aside. There we were, wordlessly fighting with each other, using nothing but the choreography of our enemy bodies to gain access to the water, when a young man entered the dining room, yelling in French, "I'm taking my shower, you idiot! With you squandering the hot water, I have nothing but cold. Stop this instant!" The young man, who must have been perhaps 25 years old, was wearing a big bathrobe that he had found somewhere or other. Foaming shampoo ran down his rather dark-skinned face, making his presence almost theatrical. Since I wasn't moving, he approached me, and with surprising resoluteness considering the clothing he wore, he turned off the tap, horrifying Madame Mumu, who understood that her turn at the sink would unfortunately be delayed. Her husband would eventually get impatient, and this undoubtedly made her very nervous. And then she silently wondered who'd had the ludicrous idea to put her in a guest house with an impolite woman who stuffed herself with sandwiches and a young fellow who paraded through the kitchen with soap suds on his head. I myself felt like killing this guy who was too aggressive for my taste and who had entered my life and my corner of the sink without so much as a warning. But he left the room where we all were so quickly to go back to the bathroom, which I gathered was right next door, that for a second I stood there dumbstruck. Who was on my way to becoming? I hadn't heard the water running a short distance away. I hadn't leapt at the young man's throat. Obviously, I had already lowered my guard and lost some of my instincts as an observer of the world, which my work had required for more than 20 years. Now, instead of listening for the slightest odd sound, I was losing myself in Turgenev and Puig, imagining that I was speaking to one of Ronaldo Arena's characters, the malevolent Celestino. And then, already at fault, I didn't even defend myself when the shower guy attacked. This hideout was likely to transform me, and I was worried about the situation. Because I badly needed my abilities as a secret agent, the Turgenevs would not come to my rescue if I were in danger. In a novel, Ivan Turgenev himself, the great painter of souls, would merely have a kind thought upon the death of people like me, but he never would have lifted a single finger to help me. I turned the water back on and finished doing my dishes. This time I listened to the young man's voice coming through the walls, calling me a bitch in French. He threatened me with the worst during the coming years in the Annex and intended to have me thrown out of there by Celestino, over whom he boasted from his shower. He had a certain influence. I made myself some coffee, letting the water run. The old woman watched me in fear without truly understanding what was happening. Her husband, upon hearing the racket the young man was making, had decided to return to the kitchen to see what had become of his meal. The old gentleman entered the room at the same time as the young fellow, who had still managed to finish washing and dress in a t-shirt, beige pants, and white tennis shoes that sparkled with cleanliness. He was walking straight toward me, intending to yell at me or threaten me, when I grabbed from Mumu's hands the knife she'd been using to slice onions and picked up a big chunk of juicy tomato all in one fell swoop. I went toward the man, brandishing my weapons, the tomato and the knife, and said, "In my line of work, I'm not accustomed to being insulted, and I've knocked off a fair number of guys bigger and braver than you. You're going to stop your chariot right there, you Ben-Hur. You're going to stop acting this way or you find yourself slaughtered or strangled in your shower, like in Hitchcock's Psycho. You know the scene. Despite your youth, we're stuck here. We're going to remain civilized. I'd be happy to stop running the water, but you have to ask nicely, you snot-nosed little brat. You can mention respect for the environment instead of just respect for yourself. How was anyone to know you were busy performing your ablutions in the bathroom? You must communicate. See? You act nice, you don't play the diva, and everything will be fine. Otherwise, it'll be war between us, and I advised you against that. I won't mess up your sneakers with my tomato this time. Say thank you. I'm 44 years old, 45 years old, and I don't have my whole life ahead of me. I'm not afraid of death, but you are. It shows right away. You tell yourself that it would be a pity for a handsome dude like you to die so young. Me, I think otherwise. I also know that you're going to dream of murdering in my sleep or strangling me from behind. You scream and yell, but you're a hypocrite. So we become buddies, we forget, and we go back to being polite. Otherwise, we play at seeing who kills the other first, or at who ruins your sneakers. And I warn you that I'm highly regarded within the organization as a wrecker of lives and sweet new kicks. The Turgenevs beat a hasty retreat, keeping their eyes on the floor. They remained silent as they waited for the young man to respond. And he, as I had expected, did not say a word. He tossed off a placated, okay, which he meant to sound jaunty, but which still reeked of resentment. He quickly tried to speak to Madame Mumu, offering to make sandwiches with her, he even bragged that he knew how to concoct a little mayonnaise that she and her husband would adore. She accepted, terrified at first, then thrilled to have found a Frenchman at her disposal. I'll skip a little bit. The young man was chatting with Mumu. From my perch on the stool where I decided to sit back down, drink my coffee, and smoke a cigarette while intimidating my companions in misfortune, who dared not deny me anything at all, I saw the young man take a knife from the drawer and cut the bread. He definitely thought for a few seconds about the opportunity he had to carve me up right here in the kitchen. But after a brief moment of reflection, during which he must have remembered that his impetuous behavior was the cause of his imprisonment in the annex, he didn't attack me. He wanted to appear docile and determined to obey. But just where did he come from? A young man who wanted hot water for his shower in the middle of a heat wave, who threw a tantrum and then capitulated the minute someone raised his voice. Was this the modern-day secret agent? Why was Agathos protecting this spineless guy who fluttered around Madame Mumu, complimenting her on the shape of her sandwiches? Was he really trying to start a conversation with me about the heat and the coffee's aroma? Who was this man-child? How did he come to be among us? He'd done something stupid on impulse. Zero self-control. Control, that was obvious. But why had he been recruited in the first place? Had he assassinated one of our own? Had they arranged for him to liquidate someone inconvenient within the organization? Was he a double agent? This nervous, hot-headed, boastful guy who trafficked in hate and vengeance reminded me of someone. Yes, but of whom? A boy I clearly didn't like. Charles Morel. Yes, Charles Morel, Proust's character, Baron Charles's protege. Celestino was going to be very proud of me for having recognized this young punk as a paper person invented by the greatest of homosexuals. My own Charles must have been a cunning devil. He was wrapping Madame Turgenev around his little finger, and she was already simpering as she tasted his yummy sandwich. And he'd start in on her husband. Maybe he'd sleep with both the oldsters, making sure that neither of the Turgenevs confessed his infidelity to the other. He was telling Mumu the story about a famous woman, a certain Natasha, who was actively being sought by the enemy's secret service. She had just escaped an assassination attempt in broad daylight, and she was on every TV station. She had seduced the Russian president, spying on him for years. She'd even married him. She worked for us, even though outwardly she was a member of England's royal family. She was Elizabeth's first cousin twice removed or something like that, and she was going to live at the Annex. Celestino had told Charles that Matahari would be here among the members of our little gang in a few hours, and Morel was squirming with impatience. He needed company. He and Mumu were thrilled that such a wonderful woman would be joining us, rejoicing at the thought of welcoming a future housemate. They seemed to have forgotten my existence, but from my seat on the stool, I interjected. But the fact that this woman is going to be here in our apartment among us, I had trouble saying this, us, but I was getting used to my affiliation with this repugnant community, is not good news. Are you imbeciles or what? Every enemy's secret service is on her tail. If your story is true, the Russian president will not stop looking for his traitorous lover until she's dead. And when they find her, who else do you think they'll come across? All of us. You didn't think of that, did you? I was angry when I realized that Celestino and his friends in the organization had housed me with these morons. But I was perhaps more outraged to learn that they were going to stick us with Matahari, the most wanted woman on the planet. There was only one conclusion to be drawn. Agathos wanted us dead. We were expendable. And that's the Annex.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathryn. So next up, the next reading will be from Whose Fish Is It by William A. Douglas. William A. Douglas is a social anthropologist who has written 24 books and 200 articles, including about his lifelong passion as a globe-trotting fly fisherman. He has also been a member and chairman of the Nevada chapter of the Nature Conservancy. I will now pass this over to Will to talk about his book. Oh, where'd he go? Oh, he was just here. Looks like he's not here. I think we'll come back, to him. Okay, I'll go to the next person and we'll come back to Will. So next up is Anthony M. Graziano. So he's the author of Teddy's World. Anthony M. Graziano, Professor Emeritus, the State University of New York at Buffalo, has authored 19 books and 50 journal articles on child mental health and research methodology. In McKinley's Ghost and the Little Tin Truck and La Belle America, America the Beautiful, he has pursued his interest in family and historical themes. Let's welcome Anthony to introduce his book. Oh, you have to unmute.
Is that audio coming through?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Ah, good. Okay, thank you so much. Um, here I am at 94 years, and I'm tickled pink to still be here and to be part of this, to listen to all of you people and your wonderful work, and to be part of this. And I'm so thankful to Michael Marola and Guernica and Marissa and all of you who made this possible. So thank you so much. It's really so nice. But let me get to Teddy's World. This is the book, Teddy's World. I guess you can see it all right. And I came to this through two avenues, I suppose. One is my relatively recent interest in writing novels. And the other is 45 years of academic teaching and research in child mental health and treatment of children with various developmental and psychological issues and disabilities. So here is here is Teddy, and Teddy was born in 1938, and he was immediately diagnosed as a mongoloid, diagnosed with Mongolism, that is a Mongolian idiot. Those were the terminology, that was the terminology that was used in medicine and psychology and in society in general at the time. Now, 1938 was a year that World War II began. And actually, it had started long before that, but that was a shooting war in 1938, when Germany from the west and Russia from the east converged and attacked Poland and pushed the world into the pit. And what, 40 million people or so, whatever, were killed, and a great portion of Europe and many countries and cities and around the Pacific Rim were destroyed. And it went on until it burned out 7 years later, but it was a terrible conflagration, as we know. Now, Teddy, of course, knew nothing about the war. He was focused on his own personal life around himself, his home, his family, and so on. But Teddy had been born at a time, 1938, when the Western world was boiling with ideas of supremacy, superiority, of demeaning and mistreating people who were deemed to be different in some ways, not only in Europe by the uh, Nazis' driven campaign to annihilate millions of their, quote, inferiors, but also in the United States, in my own country, in the United States of the 20s and 30s, we had a powerful wave of inhumanity where tens of thousands of Americans cheered Hitler and cheered Mussolini and supported and sent money and so on. And most viciously at that time, as I'm sure many you know from history, was the terrible wave of eugenics. Eugenics was that American perversion of Darwinian theory. Eugenics that mocked and rejected immigrants and people of color, even the handicapped and indigenous people and the blind, the insane, the feeble-minded, feeble-minded, another of those terms at the time. American eugenics that had such influence on the later development of Germany's own um, wave of eugenics. Now, all of that was part of Teddy's world. Um, it's the historical and the cultural background for Teddy's world. I sort of think visually. I see it as a tunnel that encompasses and encloses Teddy as he moves through that tunnel through life. Now, Teddy and his parents had very little understanding of that of that cultural surrounding that really defined Teddy's world. And in his own way, Teddy recognized it. He knew it. He called it his bad thing. It was the bad thing. It was his personal embodiment of that historical, cultural surrounding background. Teddy's world, as I've developed it here, Teddy's world also included clinical and scientific discoveries about feeble mindedness, illness, health, children's development, child development, and so on. It included some scientific um, phenomena, scientific discoveries, I should say, in mental health, in child mental health, in human genetics, and so on. All were part of this story of Teddy, and even in Teddy's lifetime, in about 1958, when Teddy was about 20 years old, I suppose, yeah. In 1958, it included even some scientific skullduggery in which the um, true discoverer of the genetic conditions leading to this type of feeble mindedness was shoved aside. And all of the world's acclaim, the attention, the support, the credit, the money, all of it was given to someone else. And that story of that woman who was shoved into the shadows is also part of Teddy's world, although not known by Teddy, even as he celebrated his 20th birthday, and that was going on. I have tried in this book to lay out Teddy's life, his trajectory, and at the same time to periodically remind the reader of this background, of this cultural surround that included so much of what makes up Teddy's world, the world of a boy, a child, a boy, a young man with serious developmental disabilities. And the same world that impinged upon not only Teddy, but everyone with the similar sorts of conditions. Teddy's parents had been told that the kindest thing we can do for this unfortunate child is to let the state of New York take him away. How do parents deal with that? How did they deal with that? And Teddy, in his own way, recognized, he knew it, he understood it somehow, that he had a struggle. He must struggle with that bad thing, as he called it, and he knew he must defeat it, confront it and defeat it. Could he do it? Well, that's what Teddy's world is all about. I'd like to read just a couple of things. First, a few lines of verse, and this pertains to the shocking revelations of the terrible treatment of Indigenous children and families by both the Canadian and the US governments and the Catholic and Protestant churches. And I'm sure you know that terrible story. It goes like this. An early morning knock on the door. The police, a social worker, or a priest. Sometimes all three. It is time, they say. Come. And they take away your children. There is nothing you can do about it. It is the law. The government bus drives up and takes away your children. The bit I'd like to read from the book is right at the beginning. First chapter, first word, first paragraph, first line. This introduces Teddy, and it goes like this. In the spring of 1953, Teddy was 15 years old and already a target. He knew this, but not in words, because thinking in words was not his strength. He knew it as rumbling feelings and dark images, but it was a certainty nonetheless, a never distant dread. On this Friday afternoon, Teddy walked along Franklin Street to Mr. Spone's store, looking around for signs of danger, clutching the money his father had given him to buy a pack of Lucky Strikes. Here's $1, his father had told him, handing him the crumpled green bill. And don't lose the change. Ah, a big responsibility, Teddy reminded himself, like carrying a heavy rock that he must never set down, even for a moment, until he returned home safely with his pa's cigarettes and change. It was not a long walk, just a few blocks. Teddy liked going to Mrs. Spone's store, but not so nice was the bad thing waiting for him at the bad corner. Sometimes it grabbed him on the way to the store and again on his return home. Those were special bad days. But so far today, nothing had happened. And Teddy felt relieved when he arrived safely at the store. But now he faced Old Green Door, Mr. Swone's thick, heavy wooden door that looked even older than Mr. Swone. Old Green Door stood there, solid and mute, blocking Teddy, challenging him to open it, to push down just right on that little thumb thing in the handle, and at the same time to shove in with his shoulder and quickly jump up and over the door sill. It had taken him many tries to get those coordinated movements to work. Determined to defeat Old Green Door, Teddy grabbed the handle, squeezed down on the latch with both hands, and pushed hard with his shoulder. He stumbled as the door flew open, banging against the wall, adding to the noise and clatter of Teddy's feet dancing on the old wooden floor to keep his balance. Once Teddy was inside, Old Green Door slammed himself shut with a window rattling crash as if celebrating another victory over Teddy. And so begins Teddy's world. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. I think you chose a great passage with that detail about Friday afternoon, and it is a Friday afternoon. Um, okay, awesome. Thank you. Um,
Okay, welcome. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Next up, we have The Fig Thief by Gabriella and Belfiglio. Gabriella is an Italian-American queer artist, poet, mother, and activist. She was awarded a Stall residency and has won awards from the Muriel Craft Bailey Poetry Contest and the W.B. Yeats Society. Her writing has been published in numerous anthologies and journals. And for more information, you can visit her website, www.gabriellabelfiglio.info. And Gabriella, I'd like to invite you to present your book.
Thank you so much, Marissa, and thank you for Guernica, everybody at Guernica, and also what a treat to hear all these other authors from the publishing company. So it's a joy to be here today. I am going to read some poems from the book, and sorry, I'm just going to set my timer just because I don't want to go too far over. Okay. So I'm going to start with a poem that goes kind of full circle to Richard's reading because it was about trains. It's a loose connection, but it also reminded me of Anthony's great story because when I was little, my father used to tell me this story about the orphan trains, which were a real thing. They happened in the 1800s. But he, of course, meant it sarcastically. So I'll let the poem do the rest of the work. Orphan Train. When someone claims I don't look like my parents, my father eagerly explains. He explains where they found me. I picture a small child playing with prairie grass by railroad tracks. She's holding a blanket or doll. Maybe it's a tattered bear. Sometimes she misses the chug of the train, pines for the chorus of her cohorts crying, yearns for a hand to clutch. My father loves to engineer fictions. A compelling story can pin my attention more than anything. He delivers the punchline with a grin that slides into his chartreuse eyes. Stranded at the last stop. Sometimes the child is oblivious, absorbed with the singular motion of pulling, her fingers like a vice on either side of thick blades. I'm going to continue in that vein. And so a lot of my work is autobiographical. And my father definitely has a big part of that. But ironically, I always was trying to find out more information about my family, but there was a reticence, I guess I would say, for sharing certain things. And so the next poem kind of explores that. It's in the form of a villanelle, which is actually from the Italian villano, which is peasant. And the original villanelles were dance songs that didn't have much form or rhyme scheme, but it's evolved into a one that has a strict one. So this one's called My Father's Father, and it starts with an epigraph by Ocean Byung. To even write father is to carve a portion of the day out of a bomb bright page. Ocean Byung. I don't know what to call you, despite the fact that you are my kin. Grandpop, I suppose, though I never got to. I've tried to learn more details, but very few have stories, at least not ones that are easily thrown in. I don't even know what to call you. I know you were wounded in World War II, and that you often drank tall glasses of gin. Grandpop, I never got to look in your eyes and see their unique hue, or hear you play your mandolin. I don't even know what to call you, with only my imagination as proof. I've heard you frequently knocked your youngest kid askew. I suppose I never even got to hear your side. But I cringe at the rumors where you screw up the loving family that somehow always made do. I don't know what to call you. Grandpop, I suppose, though I've never got to. So I say my work is autobiographical, but as the narrator, I feel like I'm kind of an unreliable narrator. It's interesting that poetry is considered nonfiction, because I think that most poems have a little bit of truth and lies in them. So I'm going to bring us now into this book was really a long time coming, and so there's it does delve a lot into my ancestral family and past, but it also brings me back into a young adulthood when I was in Brooklyn. So I'm going to read a lighter piece. It's a love poem. It's called Before Winter Comes. We ride the subway up the alphabet to the edge of Brooklyn. She tells me life and death stories. The pastel shirt she's wearing is soft between my fingers. I picture her dropping a daisy on her father's grave, veer my body across the orange seats into her. Jellyfish are strewn along the shoreline, hiding amongst the discarded round bottoms of glass bottles. If you look closely, you can see a ring of electric blue, thinner than a spider web, encircling their gelatinous bodies. I'm shocked with childhood fears as my bare feet tiptoe through the squishy landmines. Behind us, the cyclone towers above signs hawking cold beer and hot dogs, above the crooked brown of the boardwalk, above her and me tangled into each other, our bodies pressing down the faded leopard skin patterned sheet into the subtle sand. A tribe of Hasidic children in matching shirts and skirts invade our otherwise naked beach. The girls scatter away from their mother and the baby she's holding to search for shells and other treasures. 3 boys play catch, each throw bringing them closer to our embrace. Pretend not to look. In the morning, I'm salty from her kisses. The ocean and sand switched places overnight. Land became liquid, dripping into my shower drain, and the sea a scratchy solid on my skin. So I'm going to read 2 more poems, and this one is a little longer. It's in sections. And this poem was inspired also another autobiographical poem. And it's interesting. Every time someone read, when I was hearing Richard, I thought of the railroad, and Anthony, I was hearing World War II, and it helped me think about what to read. And just from one thing that Kathryn said was the kiss of the Spider Woman, I decided to switch up and read this longer poem because it briefly features in here. This is also the poem that was chosen for the W.B. Yeats Award. It's called Erasure. 1. We are forbidden to bring in lighters, matches, scissors, razors, knives, personal medications, glass bottles, glue, knitting needles, rug hooks or embroidery, firearms, liquor, marijuana or drugs, fingernail polish or remover, aerosol cans, lighter fluid, or cameras. The guard behind the front desk warns me to be careful, pointing to my belly, 7 months full of growing baby. 2. Lisa's happy to see us for once. As usual, she immediately asks if we brought cigarettes. When she hugs me, I feel bone. 3. Cell by cell, I've been watching her die for more than 2/3 of my life, longer than I've lived in Brooklyn, longer than I've lived any place, or than the tree that towers beyond my apartment has been growing, or than people have been dancing to Thriller or viewing The Simpsons, or Bono's been singing about streets worth no names, or Madonna preaching to women about describing the best in life, or we have been watching Thelma and Louise triumphantly drive off their cliff, or Spike Lee telling us to do the right thing, or witnessing William Hurt kiss Raul Julia in Kiss of the Spider Woman, or Whoopi Goldberg kiss Margaret Avery in The Color Purple, or Natalie Goldberg's been advising us to bare our bones, or we've been listening, or been tasting Anne Carson's Bittersweet, or been lost in Toni Morrison's Middle Passage. And much longer than we've been using cell phones, iPads, YouTube, blogging, Facebook, email. I've been observing my sister die longer than Lady Gaga has been alive or Georgia O'Keeffe has been dead. 4. We meet in the hospital lounge, my father next to my mother, then Lisa, her caseworker and a social worker around a square table. My girlfriend and I sit on 2 cushioned chairs along the wall close by. A team of 4 young interns in official white coats and name tags stand on the other side of the table. They discuss business. Lisa drags her chair in between Margarita and me. Lisa tells me she's going gray in the same place as I am. She tears her chair over to her mother's side, interrupts the conversation. She has something really important to tell her, and just as fast spins back to me and asks if I will buy her a Diet Coke from the machine downstairs. She can't sit still. Still, it's the longest I've seen her contained in years. She tells me she cannot wait to get out of this place, that it's been months and they all drive her crazy. She looks hesitantly over to Margarita and tells her it's nice to meet her, not remembering when, about a year ago, she viciously pushed her out of the room. Lisa leans closer to me and asks if I know who the father is. She tells me I can call her any time if I need to talk. Afterwards, she scrapes her chair to our father's side, climbs onto his lap, as if trying to erase 40 years. His body turns to stone. 5. How many times have I tried to write this poem? 6. Before we leave, Lisa releases the chain from her neck, a gift from her boyfriend. She says she's sorry it got a little messed up from the shower. Loops it around my neck. The rusted silver heart dangles into the hollow of my clavicle. And I think that brought me just to time. So thank you all very much. It's a real joy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's done their reading so far. I don't think William was able to join again, but I do have a video for his reading that I can play. I'm just gonna read out his bio again, and then I'll share my screen and share the video. So, William A. Douglas is a social anthropologist who has written 24 books and 200 articles, including about his lifelong passion as a globe-trotting fly fisherman. He has also been a member and chairman of the Nevada chapter of the Nature Conservancy. And I will share my screen now. The video itself, the quality is not the best, but I do think the audio is okay. Can everyone see this? Okay.
Go.
And everyone can hear as
Good
well?
afternoon. My name is William Douglas, and I am the author of the book, Whose Fish Is It? The Sport Fishing Conundrum in the Contemporary World. I thank you all for tuning in. This book is about a dilemma, or more accurately, several. I pose them to you, my reader, but without proposing solutions. I regard them to be as intractable as the interminable debates over abortion. Like the latter, I suspect that there will never be a final resolution. Rather, the outcomes will move back and forth along a continuum in which today's relative victors are tomorrow's vanquished, ad infinitum. What I have labeled the sport fishing conundrum is the recent and present interactions among several vested interest groups that define the playing field. Specifically, we will be considering the national policies regarding angling and hunting of several underdeveloped world countries, the hegemonic territorial claims of their indigenous peoples, the efforts of several developed countries and NGOs to conserve the planet's natural resources, and the initiatives of sports fishing outfitters catering to an elite clientele. At times, these interests complement one another, while at others, they clash. The conundrum is captured by my title, Whose Fish Is It? The short answer regarding said ownership for national governments is, quote, to all of our citizens, unquote. For the indigenous peoples, it is, quote, they are part of our sovereign territory, unquote. For conservationists, quote, they belong to present and future generations of humanity, unquote. And for sport fishermen, quote, they belong to us because we paid for exclusivity to them, if briefly, unquote. I have several credentials for addressing these topics. I am a social anthropologist by training and have conducted anthropological field research on Basque and Italian rural communities in Europe and their immigration patterns to Latin America, Australia, and the Western United States. Over the past half century, I have published approximately 24 books and 200 articles in my field. I know how to frame a problem and then write about it. For the last 50 years, I have been a globe-trotting angler engaged in many exploratory expeditions to new potential fishing destinations around the globe. I have authored several pieces for the Fly Fishing Forum called Angling Report and 4 fishing articles for Sporting Classics magazine. In 2002, I published a book entitled Casting About in the Real World that chronicles my catch and release angling philosophy, as well as lampooning several of my exploratory misadventures. So I know how to write about the sport. Then too, for several decades, I have been a member of the advisory board of the Nevada chapter of the Nature Conservancy. Consequently, I have rather extensive personal experience in environmentalism. Each of the 4 protagonists in this story has its strengths and weaknesses, pros and cons, as it were. My approach will be to consider 3 Latin American case studies, another in Africa, and 1 in Asia. My South America ventures are with the Simane operation in Bolivia, Golden Dorado, the fishery on Guyana's Rewa River, Arapaima, and the Brazilian Amazon's Curicuari River for peacock bass. In Africa, I document the search for Nile perch on Cameroon's Faro River. In Asia, the focus is upon development of a northern Mongolian fishery in the Egg-Ur river system, which is for taimen. I experienced each of the 5 operations during the earliest phase of its development. I write about my own experiences in these unique places, augmented by ancillary research into secondary sources about them and interviews with their principals. I know how to write the usual angling piece that is the standard fare of popular magazines. Like the fishing videos that you see at odd hours on your television, they are superficial and border on fish porn. That is, they are formulaic, while expounding on how to get somewhere and the experiences in both the camp and the fishing waters, some of which are likely sensationalized. In this book, I try to retain the flavor of the personal account while embellishing it in both theme and length well beyond what would be publishable in a popular piece. At the same time, I want to repress my academic persona's penchant for producing a text that is all but unreadable by the layman. So, I hope that this book will engage your attention and then hold it. While I want to entertain with several near incredible stories, my ultimate purpose is to raise extremely serious issues. Some are in the forefront of the conundrum posed by today's sport fishing. Others lurk in the shadows. While this is a book about winners and losers, I want to underscore that it is not about good and evil. By that I mean that all of the protagonists subscribe to a vision of a better future, defined, to be sure, in terms of at least some self-interest. The problem becomes that one person's dream is easily another's nightmare, the two often being irreconcilable. Ergo, we are faced with seemingly intractable dilemmas. Avanti. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I will share his. And there's the book posted in the chat as well. Okay, so that was all of the readings. We will now be moving on to the Q&A period. So if anyone has any questions for the authors, except William because he wasn't able to stay, um, you can feel free to put those in the chat. So we'll give that a minute. Okay, so we have a question for Richard. I will. Okay, so Richard, how does growing up in a rural setting influence your work?
Well, I have two very different strands of my life. One is my mother was a German Jewish refugee to England on the Kindertransport. So two of my novels have been about the Holocaust. The other two, completely different, have been about my upbringing in a very rural part of England, the famous Cotswold Hills. So I grew up in the heart of the Cotswolds, and it's a magical part of the world. I'm about currently 40 miles away from it in Oxford, but I yearn for those wonderful beech woods and rolling hills and streams that are the memory of my childhood. So writing about that landscape is very much one of my two main projects as a novelist. And the new novel, if it's about anything, is not really about Grace, the doctor's daughter, and Sean, the Irish navvy. It's really most of all about one wood through which both those characters walk and in which they largely spend their days. So the landscape, also for my poetry, features hugely prominently and has really shaped me. I hope that helps.
Oh, awesome. I think that was a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Mercer, can you hear it? This is Anthony.
Oh, yes. I think we can hear.
Oh, good. I'm having some trouble getting a question here in this chat format. Um, so I wonder if I can just ask it
Yeah, you can go ahead.
vocally here. Um,
Sure.
and it's a question to everyone really. Gabriella mentioned how the degree to which some of her work, or maybe all of her work, has some autobiographical um, content to it. And I know in my own work, at least in the three novels that I've written, not in the previous 20 or so professional, psychiatric textbooks and so on, but um, the autobiographical aspect, I realize from Gabriella's comment, is very powerful for me. And going back and thinking about it, each of those three books were very, very autobiographical. And it got me thinking as I sat here listening to everyone, that even my own clinical work and research work had been in many ways developed on the basis of my own family experience, autobiographical and so on. So this is kind of a new revelation to me, suddenly realizing this thing. I was wondering, all the authors, everyone who's presented here, to what degree is that also true of your own work? How important is that personal and autobiographical aspect? How important is it in your work, and to what degree are you aware of it as a writer? I hope the question makes any kind of sense, but I'll just throw it open to everyone.
Yeah, so whoever wants to answer that can go ahead. If anyone wants to start.
Doesn't apply to me because as a translator, I take on the persona of someone else. So it's certainly not my autobiography involved.
Huh.
I mean, I already admitted that I am autobiographical. It's interesting. I saw my aunt was part of this Zoom, and the one of the reasons I said I'm an unreliable narrator is because sometimes I feel like to get to the truth of a poem, you have to change the details. So maybe the person who's wearing a blue shirt is actually you say they're wearing a pink shirt because it goes with the poem's mood or feeling or whatever. And and the poem I wrote about my grandfather, I certainly changed what I knew, some details because of rhyme scheme or circumstance. And so I was thinking of her as I was reading and imagining that, oh, that doesn't quite sound like the truth, you know. But so I feel like it could easily get really philosophical about like what is the truth and all that stuff. But it is. I think even when I write, and I do write in persona poems, you know. I try there's something about like the personal voice or the I perspective that I think um I bring in.
Hmm.
Awesome. Thanks for your answer, Gabriella. Any other authors before we move on want to answer that?
On Gabriella's comment here, there's a an old Italian saying, "Se non è vero è buon trovato," which, which means essentially, eh, so it's not true, but it's a good story. So I guess one can change, factual elements of a poem and so on. Um, in order to make it flow.
Okay, great. I think we will move on. There are more questions in the chat. Um, so the next question is for Kathryn. How did you approach translating the Annex?
Kind of head on. Since I've known Kathryn Mavakakis's work for almost 25 years now, I know how she writes. It's not super difficult writing. It was more the most important thing to me is getting the tone. So there's some sort of tongue-in-cheek thing. There's humor, obviously. The part I read was sort of, I mean, you have to laugh at some of it.
Yeah.
So it's more about getting the tone. And her books I'm working on another one of her books, in fact, which has a completely different sort of atmosphere. So it's getting the atmosphere, the attitude and tone of voice of the characters, and this character, Anna, who's sort of a Secret Service agent, but she's also very, very, very literary, well-read spy.
Awesome. Thanks for the answer. There was a follow-up question. I'm not sure if you wanted to expand on your answer from the chat. It was from Gabriella, as she asked, did you work with the author directly?
I actually met Kathryn Mavakakis at my oral defense of my master's thesis, which was on her first novel. And she's been really sort of very supportive of my translating her work, even though it took all this time to get there. And so she's been available. I sort of, when I work, I have like a series of questions that go along in the margin of my text. And she's been great about answering all my questions. And the thing about, how much truth do you tell? I had a question about she mentioned an Amsterdam metro stop. And I said, so I'm looking up, trying to find the Amsterdam metro stop that she's talking about. And it's like, well, there are two, it could have been, but which one was it? And it doesn't matter. It's just like, it's okay. That detail doesn't matter. It's just the West Amsterdam stop. Okay.
Very good.
But one thing I did do, she quotes a lot of the Diary of Anne Frank in this book. And for that, I did not allow her to mess around. I went to there are several translations, but I went to one of the most highly used translations. And some of her French citations from the diary were not precise, and I corrected that.
Yeah, that seems pretty important for sure.
Well, they weren't vast differences, but I wanted to use exactly what Anne Frank had said. A direct translation from the German to English, not German to French to English.
Okay, interesting. No, that's good.
Hmm.
Thank you for your answer to those questions. And were there any other questions or any questions from authors to other authors as well?
I'm just curious where everybody is. Obviously Richard is not here. He's in England, but Gabriella, are you in?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York right now, in my house, my house, in my office. You can see a lot of my inspirations behind me. All these women poets here.
I liked your quoting Ocean Vuong.
Oh, thank you.
This is Anthony. I'm out in Southern California,
Oh,
and having grown up near New York City, out in the suburban area around New York City, but having also Sheila, my late wife, and I, and our children spent just over 50 years living in Buffalo, New York, dealing with the snow and so on. And we recently moved to California. And since you did show a little bit of your background, let me show you a piece of mine. Can we get this or not for a video? Video of no, no, I guess I can. Marissa, you don't want to show me anymore. Okay. That's okay.
I think you turned your camera off.
I don't, no, not there. Maybe there.
There you are,
There you go.
Anthony.
You're back.
I just wanted to share briefly. I don't know about everybody's politics, but we have had many anti-Trump rallies out here where I live, and I attend them. And one of the neat things is making signs. Um, so I'd like to draw the cartoons and make the sign. I was hoping to show you a couple of them, but so be it. Um, Can we do that, Marissa, or not? I guess
Uh,
not.
do you have them,
No?
or do you have them like printed, or is it your screen you want to share?
Is the trash man cometh? Is that one of them?
Oh, I don't know if he can hear us.
Anthony?
Yeah.
In the background, I see the trash man cometh. Is that one of your signs?
Oh, are I don't have the image here. I'm not seeing it here.
It's
Yes.
behind you.
Let
Oh,
me
Meanwhile, Kathryn and
Oh,
Richard,
yeah,
where are
yeah.
you calling in from?
Yes.
I'm in Montreal, Canada,
Nice. I love
but I'm
Montreal.
I'm an American.
Montreal's so beautiful.
I
I'm
wouldn't
in
think so
Oxford.
today.
No. And Richard, how about you?
Oxford.
Oxford. Wow.
What the presidency means to Trump. Okay.
I don't know if you can see them.
Show us again.
Put this on there. I don't know if you can see them clearly, but it's just kind of fun. Um, here.
I like your Qatari jet
There we go.
and Trump's
Anyhow,
rum.
I wanted to share it with you. Maybe you get a kick out of them.
Well, some of us share your politics, apparently.
And perhaps some of you don't. That's all right too.
Well, thanks
Uh,
for sharing, Anthony. Were there any other questions for our authors, or was that all? Oh, we have one for Gabriella. Do you have multiple poems on the go at one time, or do you finish one and then move on?
Um, I'm sorry, multiple poems. Oh, interesting. So, yeah, I have like a lot going on all the time. And so, the the poems for The Fig Thief were actually some they span the biggest period probably that I'll ever publish a book again in because there were some poems that I've written either in grad school or other times in my life that I thought would be a good context. And so um the newer stuff that I'm working on is I feel like more time a shorter time period and more focused thematically. But as far as like any given poem, I have all different stages. So I have poems that have been like sitting in the drawer for a long time that sometimes I'll revisit if I'm sending it out to a contest, I'll like look at it and edit it again or there's always the impulse to write something new. So I'm always starting new things. If they get finished is another story and then shown to people and edited and that whole process. Um, but I write new things like almost everything's inspiring. So it's like just a song you hear or something I see, whatever it is. I'm always writing scraps down.
Oh, for sure. As a poet myself, I definitely understand that as well. Thank you for your answer.
Thanks for the question.
Okay, and was there any other questions from anyone? Any authors have any questions for other authors? I don't see anything else in the chat.
I have a Mercer. Can you hear me? I have a
Yes,
technical
I can hear.
question, sort of, for you. Um, is my all thumbs lack of ability with all kinds of electronic things lead me to ask this: how would anyone else access what we've done here today? Is that possible or not? Or once we sign off, is it has it all disappeared into the
Um,
ether or whatever it's called?
yeah, so I've been recording it, so we're gonna share it to the recording to Facebook afterwards so everyone can watch
Oh,
that.
good. Okay, so we'll be able to access that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Um, and it looks like that's all. So I will conclude the launch. Um, so yeah, that concludes Guernica's Fall 2025 virtual launch. Thank you to everyone who joined us online today. Thank you to the authors, Richard, Kathryn, William, Anthony, and Gabriella, for your amazing readings. Thanks to Crystal and to the authors who asked questions and left questions in the chat, and to everyone who joined on Zoom, as well as anyone who's watching this back. Just some reminders before we go. Be sure to follow Guernica Editions on our social media to get updates about our future events, and you can also sign up for our newsletter as well on our website. As for some upcoming Guernica events, so we'll be having a Montreal in-person launch on December 6th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. It'll be at the Reed Quebec Fair, and it will feature authors Michael Caron, Miriam Yildiz, Andreas Casares, Anne Kavlovic, Jonathan Kaplansky, and Francis Catalano, as well as Bunmi Oyensen. Guernica will be doing an Audible launch at the Avant-Garde Bar on Tuesday, December 9th at 7 p.m. And the authors featured there will be Nicola Volpe, Margot Lapierre, Anne Kavlovic, Sophie Ann Edwards, Bunmi Oyensen, and Andreas Casares. And we also hope to see you on December 7th for our final fall in-person launch in Toronto, where we will announce the winner of this year's Guernica Prize. And you can find the full details for all of these upcoming events on our social media pages. So thanks again to everyone for joining this launch, and we hope you enjoyed these fabulous readings. And that concludes our launch. Thank you so much.